Hello everyone. Hello everyone. Peace be upon you all. Welcome to the second video where we read this book on linguistics, an introduction to linguistics. We have read the following bits. What is linguistics? Fundamental concepts. And we are right now in section 3 in chapter 1, design features of human language. We have learned that human languages are arbitrary in the sense that the form and meaning have no necessary connection between them. We also learned that they can use displacement, can displace things from the past and from faraway places and talk about such things. And now we are going to learn the third characteristic, cultural transmission. Children learn to speak the language or languages used in the environment in which they are reared. They do not inherit their language via parental genes, in the way they inherit hair and skin color. Languages are passed on by cultural transmission. Many of the world's languages are endangered due partly to interruptions in transmission across the generations. Animal communication systems, by contrast, seem to be, to a large extent, instinctive and genetically conditioned. Think, for instance, of the meowing of the domestic cat. To most of us, meowing is an archetypical trait of the species and found in cats regardless of whether they live in Europe or New Zealand, and regardless of whether they were reared by humans in the virtual absence of other cats. Some birds do require exposure to the songs of other members of their species. Lacking this, they still instinctively produce songs, but these will be abnormal in some way. I had a bird whose parents died while it was a baby, so it did not learn from its parents how to sing. So when it started singing, it started copying the sounds of birds, of the normal sparrows outside the building, in the gardens, which is very interesting. So it was singing like a sparrow when it was a fisher lovebird. Naturally, it had normal lovebird sounds, but it copied the singing of other birds instead of copying its parents, which produced abnormal songs, as he says. This is like some types of body behavior in human beings, such as laughing, smiling, and crying. Though universal, they admit cultural modifications and elaborations. Although the language a person speaks is culturally transmitted, the ability to speak a language is a genetic predisposition. the extent of this predisposition, what aspects of language are genetically encoded, is a controversial issue on which linguists take conflicting positions. Duality. Utterances in human languages are patterned simultaneously on two levels: the level of form and the level of meaning. This was very difficult for me to understand in the first time, so I'll try to help you if you don't understand. We bring meanings together to form a new meaning. So the word on means something is above something, and the word come means it means something is going back to something. So I am coming to you, I'm going to you. Or come to me, go to me. There is no going back, sorry. It's just going. So, together, come. On, bring on a new meaning. Meaning hurry. Similarly, duality alone has a meaning, and patterning has a meaning, and of has a meaning. Together, the duality of patterning has a new meaning. So, we bring together meanings to formulate new meanings. We also bring meaningless sounds together on the level of form, bring forms together to produce meanings. Like the word come is composed of C and O and M and E, but forget about the E because it's not a sound. Just C, O and M. Come. So I have used forms, bring forms together to form a word. I can reuse these forms and rearrange them and use these sounds in other words. I hope I have helped. So we are formulating meanings using forms and using meanings. The building blocks are forms brought together to formulate meanings, and we bring together meanings to formulate new meanings. So this is the duality of patterning. The Warwa, which is a Newlin language in Australia, found in Australia. The Warwa word Yila, which means dog, is made up of sounds that are meaningless in themselves, but when put together in a certain way, make up the sign form. Put together in a different way, for instance, la yi, we get a different word meaning alone or singly. Put together in yet other ways, for example, yail, we get forms that are not possible words in the language. Duality of patterning permits many different words to be made up from a small number of meaningless elements that are put together in various ways. Duality of patterning seems not to be found in animal communication systems. Their sign forms are simply in the sense that they cannot be analyzed into components that are reused in other signs. There is an absence of patterning in the forms, as also in the meanings. Each form is completely different from every other form and does not involve components that are reused to make other forms. The various calls your cat produces are separate whole units and cannot be divided into parts that can be reused to make other calls with different meanings. The meow of a cat is not composed of separate sounds like M and E that could be used that could be used in different orders to produce different calls. Say im. The English word meow is, however, composed of three usable parts that are found in other words of the language. Productivity. Productivity or creativity is the characteristic whereby speakers can make new meanings by producing new expressions and utterances. Linguistic signs can be put together to form sequences that may never have been produced before, and even if they are not entirely novel, they may be innovative in that they are not drawn from memory. Not only do we effortlessly create such utterances, but hearers have little difficulty understanding them. A good deal of what we say is not new. We use formulaic greetings and farewells many times in the average day. We express meanings that have been expressed with variations in sound and perhaps also slight variation in wording innumerable times before, as in the case of poetry, jokes, oral traditions, and urban myth, for instance. Another aspect of the productivity of language is that speakers can invent new words to express new ideas and new objects and events that they encounter. No living human language has a rigidly closed class of words that admits no new members. Think of the number of new English words that have been invented in recent years to facilitate talking about and on computers and the internet. Some of the main ways that new words are incorporated into a language are discussed in Chapter 4, Section 2. The communication system of non-human animals, by contrast, are typically non-productive and do not admit new combinations of signs or the invention of new signs for new meanings. These systems allow for the expression of a small set of possible meanings. The honeybee's dance that indicates the location of a nectar source is restricted to the horizontal dimension, and bees are incapable of specifying that the location of a nectar source is vertically above the hive. Reflexivity. This book is about human language and is written in a human language. Your lectures on linguistics are about language and are spoken in a human language. All human languages can be and often are used in this way, for conveying information about themselves. This need not be abstruse linguistic information. It could be something as simple as the word is not nice, as that word is not nice to use in polite company. This property is reflexivity. No known animal communication system shows reflexivity. There is no evidence that dogs can bark about barking, that cats ever meow about meowing, or that bees dance about their dancing. Likewise, many sign systems human beings employ cannot be used to convey information about themselves. Traffic lights do not allow for messages about themselves, and nor do gestures or facial expressions. Section 4. Outline of modern linguistics from a historical perspective. People everywhere talk about language. They have ideas about its nature, uses, origins, structure, how it is learned, and so on. Some of these notions are enshrined in mythology. For example, the Tower of Babel story. In some sense, the things people say and believe about language could qualify as linguistics, perhaps folk linguistics, but as we are using it, the term linguistics refers to a scientific system of knowledge. Before we go deeper into the subject, it is useful to overview the main trends, situating them in a broad historical perspective. The earliest concrete evidence of discourse about language dates to about 4,000 years ago, when scribes in ancient Mesopotamia listed forms of Sumerian nouns and verbs on clay tablets. They did this because Sumerian, the language of religion and the law, was no longer in everyday use, and it had to be taught as a foreign language. Traditions of linguistics also emerged in ancient India and Greece for similar reasons. An earlier language was important for some purposes but had changed so much that it could no longer be understood by the ordinary speaker. The study of linguistics intensified in the Middle Ages. Subsequently, with the advent of European colonialism in the 15th century, Europeans came into contact with an unexpected diversity of languages and peoples. From information gathered by travelers, missionaries, and others, it became apparent that some languages are related to one another. Procedures for establishing these relationships were gradually honed until the late 19th century, by which time the comparative method had been largely perfected. Modern linguistics emerged soon after, with a change of focus from historical concerns to the notion of language as a system, the basis of structuralism which still permeates the subject. The Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure, who we have already met, was a key figure in this refocusing of interest, and is regarded as the founding father of modern linguistics. His Cours de linguistique générale, course in general linguistics, was published posthumously in 1916, reconstructed from his students' lecture notes. As we have already noted, modern linguistics is an empirical endeavor concerned with describing and accounting for patterns of speech and language. To account for the patterns means to explain them, for this theory is essential. As in other social sciences, there is considerable theoretical diversity. This theoretical diversity characterizes all domains of modern linguistics, including grammar. Grammatical theories tend to cluster into two main types, formal and functional. According to whether the primary emphasis is on language as an algebraic system of symbols put together according to rules, or on language as a system that has developed in particular ways in order to serve functions in human life. We discuss these two approaches in the following subsections. It should be noted, however, that the formal-functional opposition is not restricted to grammatical theories. It underpins theoretical approaches to virtually all domains of linguistics. We can talk of formal and functional linguistics according to the approach to grammar assumed. For instance, studies of both psycholinguistics and sociolinguistics are markedly different in the questions considered significant, methodologies, and so on, depending on whether a formal or a functional approach is presumed. Formal linguistics. In America, from the 1930s onwards, mainstream structuralism became increasingly algebraic in orientation and focused increasingly on syntax. In 1957, this tradition suffered a major blow with the publication of Noam Chomsky's, who was born in 1928, Syntactic Structures. Influenced by developments in mathematical logic, Chomsky's program explicitly rejected some of the dominant preoccupations of American structuralism, including its empiricist philosophy, that knowledge derives from sense experiences. Instead, Chomsky advocated a rationalist philosophy that knowledge is based on reason. Chomsky's thought quickly became dominant not just in America but also in Europe and elsewhere. It has effectively defined mainstream linguistics ever since. Grammar is considered to be a formal system comprising rules and or other mechanisms for generating the grammatical sentences of a language, and for this reason the tradition is called generative grammar. Generative theory developed rapidly, and mainstream Chomskyan generative grammar has undergone numerous substantial changes and renovations over the past half a century or so. Alternative generative theories were also developed by others. Functional linguistics. The late 1950s also saw new developments in linguistics in Europe that took off in functional directions, stressing both the meaning side of the Saussurean sign and the idea that language developed the way it did because of the uses it is put to. Key figures were André Martinet, who was born in 1908 and died in 1999. And Michael Halliday, who lived between 1925 and 2018. The functionalist schools they initiated continue to this day as minor but significant forces on the linguistic landscape. Later, other functionally oriented schools emerged, mainly in opposition to generative grammar. One was functional grammar, developed from the late 1960s by the Dutch linguists Simon Dick, who lived from 1940 to 1995. A rather amorphous tradition arose in the United States of America. What does amorphous mean? What's up? Why is it taking so long? Okay, let's search Google instead. Amorphous meaning. Without a clearly defined shape or form. Shapeless, formless, unformed, unshaped. Okay. A rather amorphous tradition arose in the USA around the same time. West Coast functional grammar. Prominent in this tradition was the idea that grammatical categories are functional, that they arose to serve a purpose. More recently, two more coherent schools arose in the USA, largely replacing West Coast functional grammar. Cognitive grammar, associated with Ronald Langaker, who was born in 1942, and construction grammar, which is associated with Charles Fillmore, who lived in 1924, was born in 1929 and died in 2014, and his associates. Both assign prominent place to the Saussurean sign. What do you think? What is true? Formal linguistics or functional linguistics? Is there really a grammar, an inherent grammar, with which we generate words and sentences? Or is it more informal, that just develops spontaneously to serve a function? I feel like functional linguistics sounds more reasonable. And God knows best. Scope of modern linguistics. Contemporary linguistics is a richly diversified field with so many specializations that no scholar can possibly cover them all. Many branches acquired their separate identities and methodologies in the second half of the 20th century, although most had been investigated previously. Generative grammar remains a major force determining the orientations and goals of many branches, although other theories have had some impact. The majority of the approximately 7,000 languages spoken in the world today and in the recent past have yet to be adequately documented and described. Many linguists are engaged in gathering data on the poorly documented languages. normally by doing field work in remote locations and describing them by writing grammars and compiling dictionaries and collections of texts. Missionary linguists, many working under the umbrella of SIL International, a missionary organization established in the USA in 1934, continue to play a prominent role. Over 1,000 languages are currently under investigation by SIL linguists. Speakers of poorly documented languages are increasingly playing prominent roles, both as gatekeepers determining access to speech communities and controlling the direction of research and its applications, and in describing and documenting their languages. The need for this descriptive work is underlined by the fact that many of the world's languages are endangered and unlikely to survive into the next century. Despite the political rhetoric, this field does not occupy a prominent or powerful position in linguistics or on the agenda of many research funding bodies, and a relatively small proportion of linguists are active in it. Like other sciences, linguistics has applications including to language learning, literacy, and translation. Indeed, many branches of linguistics have contributed to applied linguistics, the field concerned with applications of linguistics. For example, descriptive linguistics to maintaining and strengthening endangered languages, psycholinguistics to assisting individuals with language difficulties, for example, resulting from strokes, pragmatics and conversation analysis to cross-cultural communication, and sociolinguistics to the educational field. Recent years have seen linguists increasingly called on for expert advice in the legal domain, including speaker identification and land rights for indigenous peoples. Another major area of application is in the computational field, including to machine generation and recognition of speech, automatic passing of texts, translation, and building and maintaining large corpora. Collections of texts. Forensic linguistics, the branch of linguistics concerned with applications to the legal domain, does not have quite the popular appeal of forensic anthropology or archaeology, and I am not aware of any popular mystery fiction with a forensic linguist in a lead role, comparable with Simon Beckett's series with forensic anthropologist Dr. David Hunter. Nevertheless, it is not uncommon for something spoken or written to provide a critical clue in crime fiction. For example, in Agatha Christie's first. In Arabic, we say Agaza. I don't know how it's pronounced in English. Agatha Christie. First book, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. Poirot infers that someone had written a will from scribblings on an envelope, and in an episode of Midsummer Murderers entitled Dead Man's 11, the crucial clue comes when Barnaby understands or thinks he understands the significance of two people's use of a non-standard expression. He even uses the word linguistic. Nice. Summing up. Guide to further reading. Issues for further thought. Okay. Let's start with part 1, language, system and structure. Chapter 2, sounds of language, phonetics and phonology. The fundamental properties of speech sounds. The speech chain. A simple and influential model of speech communication, the so-called speech chain model, presented in diagrammatic form, identifies the following steps in conveying a message from speaker to hearer. A thought emerges in the brain of the speaker and is encoded in language. Messages are sent through nerves from the brain to the vocal apparatus, the muscles and organs that act together to produce speech sounds. The muscles and organs are positioned and set into motion. As a result, sounds are produced that travel through the air. These sounds reach the ear of the hearer, which process these sounds, converting them into nervous signals. These signals travel along the auditory nerves to the brain of the hearer. The hearer's brain decodes these impulses, arriving at a thought which is hopefully similar to the thought that started in the speaker's brain. The last 3 steps also apply to the speaker. In a feedback loop, the sound reaches the speaker's ear, is converted to electrical signals that travel to the brain, which decodes them and compares the spoken utterance with the intended utterance. The 3 processes in the middle of this list, marked by the vertical bars, are the main concerns of phonetics, and give us the 3 primary divisions of the subject. Articulatory phonetics, concerning the production of speech sounds. Acoustic phonetics, concerning the physical properties of the sound waves. And auditory phonetics, concerning the perception of speech sounds. We deal mainly with articulatory phonetics in this chapter. Phones. Readers of this book will be familiar with the idea that a stretch of speech, such as a spoken version of "the farmer kissed the duckling," can be divided up into a sequence of phones or sounds coming one after another. First, there is the sound written "the" and pronounced in the same way as in they and them. This is followed by another sound written "e" and pronounced like in sofa. Then comes the F sound as in frog and sound as is also found in father, and so on. But the reality is not so simple. Figure 2.1 shows the sound wave for my production of this short sentence. What you can see immediately is that the sound is a continuous stream. It is not made up of separate blocks of sound separated by pauses. Let's see. So, can we zoom further? Okay, cool. Straight line like this indicates that there is no sound. The longer the line, the higher or the louder the volume is. So here as you can see, from the beginning to the end, there is volume. even at this point, you can see here that the volume is very low, but it's still not a straight line. It's not a straight line. There is still vibration. Then at the end, a straight line, truly a straight line. So this is what he wants to say. The sound the sentence is a continuous stream. It's just one block, not separate blocks of sound separated by pauses. There is no precise point where you could say that the sound written the ends and the one written e begins. The best we can say is that the e sound begins at around 0.06 seconds. Nor is there a clear division between the words, and the F sound runs on directly from the E sound, or the A sound, at around 0.11 seconds, and is followed immediately by the A sound at around 0.25 seconds. As you can see here below, the and pharma, there is no pause. There is no breaks. The closest we get to a straight line is here, within ed, kissed. The T sound is a stop, so there is the volume is as low as it gets. At kissed, as at the T part, and at the duck part. Duck, the K is a pause, it's a very low volume. So the point is, what is the point? The point is that unlike writing, here in writing we can see words are separated quite neatly. In speech, words are merged together as if they are one word. Try listening to a foreign language. It is almost impossible to distinguish words from each other. The entire sentence is like a single word. Also, there is long words, like duckling. If you hear it, you might guess that it's two words, but it is one word. And so on. There is no interruption in the sound stream throughout the word pharma. As you can see here, pharma, there is no interruption. Later, between about 0.97 and 1.03 seconds, there is a significant reduction in the sound wave. This might seem to be between kissed and the T at the end of kissed, as we said here, this part. But in fact, it is within the word kissed. The final sound of this word, despite the spelling, is a T sound, and that sound extends from about 0.91 to about 1.03, progressively becoming weaker. Similar remarks apply to the remainder of the utterance. In particular, the other apparent break in the sound wave between 1.42 and 1.45 seconds occurs within the K sound of duckling, not between K sound and the following L sound. The same goes for the pronunciation of the sentence. The parts of the mouth involved in producing these sounds are in continuous motion. They do not move in a series of jerks from one fixed position to another. You do not first put your tongue in the position to make the sound, then shift it instantaneously to the position to produce the sound, then immediately put your lower lip against the upper teeth to make the F sound, and so on. Even if you cannot draw an exact boundary between each of the phones in the way that you can between the letters making up the words of the printed sentence, an ordinary handwritten version would raise similar difficulties of division. It does seem that the stream is made up of sequences of sounds of various types, following one after another. The idea that you can divide stretches of speech into phones is a good approximation. To study the sounds of a language, it is useful to represent phones in writing. For this purpose, we use the International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA, a set of symbols based primarily on the Latin alphabet and extensive and flexible enough to accommodate the sounds of any language. Table 2.1 shows the main symbols from the latest version of the IPA dated 2015. And these are the symbols. At the many symbols. The vocal tract. Section 2. The vocal tract. The organs involved in producing the sounds of speech are referred to collectively as the vocal tract. These are the lungs, the larynx, the oral cavity, and the nasal cavity. The larynx is the inner part of the neck. First, the lungs. Most speech sounds are produced on a stream of air forced out of the lungs, through the trachea or windpipe, and then through the upper vocal tract, where the air stream is modified in various ways to produce different sounds. This stream of air is called an egressive pulmonic airstream. Egressive meaning something like external, it's coming out. pulmonic refers to the lungs. So it's an airstream coming out of the lungs. This is different from ingressive pulmonic stream, which is the air drawn into the lungs. So that air stream you could make with it sounds like the sound when you're surprised, like you get me, like this. Non-pulmonic airstream is non-pulmonic sounds is things you could make with your tongue, like clicks. So aggressive pulmonic airstream. Speech in English and most other languages is usually produced on aggressive pulmonic air. It is also possible to produce speech sounds on air drawn into the lungs, on an ingressive pulmonic airstream. This is like speaking while breathing in. Although not as often used as aggressive pulmonic air, in some languages it is used to convey emotional effects. For instance, in Danish and other Scandinavian languages, words, for example, ja, yes, are sometimes produced on an ingressive airstream to indicate sympathy or commiseration. Other airstream mechanisms used in human languages will be discussed in 2.4. Section 4. This ya would be pronounced while breathing in. Ya, ya, ya. Not ya, not ya. It would be ya, 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 ya. I think, I'm not sure. Let's see. Ingressive. Yeah.
Somebody who it's a bird who has taken out there.
Yeah,
Oh.
so it's not in there anymore, that's
No.
a shell.
A bird ate it.
It's only a shell.
Bird ate it?
Yep,
Uh-huh.
Be careful, you're not
it'll poke you.
Yeah.
fingers. You have a lot of apartments.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
we have lots.
Norlis.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Did you hear it? Yeah.
Of apartments.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
we have lots.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. 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 The larynx. In the larynx, the airstream passes between a pair of muscular flaps called the vocal folds or cords, which can be drawn together to interrupt the airstream or left open. Let me show you. Vocal cords. This is in slow motion, of course. It's very strange. Humans are very strange. So, if you bring the vocal cords together closely, but not too tightly, forcing air between them will cause them to vibrate regularly, opening and closing very rapidly. This is how you produce the sound you might produce after the first sip of a long-awaited drink, or when lying down for a well-needed nap. These vibrations of the vocal folds, called voicing, can be felt by holding your thumb and first finger against your Adam's apple. Try it. You will feel vibration. Now say s, the sound of a deflating tire. You will notice that the vibrations are not present while you produce this sound. Try. S. Same goes with F and V. V is voiced. Try. Same with the and the. The. Z. Zebra. Zoo. And s. And thin. And so on. Sounds like that are produced with voicing are called voiced phones, while those produced without it, like s, are called voiceless. Compare the and thin. You will notice that the first phone of one of them is voiced and the other voiceless. Which is which? The is voiced and thin is voiceless. In producing voiced speech sounds, the vocal folds vibrate regularly, usually at between 80 and 400 cycles per second or hertz. This means that they move from the closed position to the open position and back again to the closed position between 80 and 400 times in a second, with each complete cycle taking about the same time. While you are producing the sound, tighten your vocal folds further until the airstream is blocked off completely. Release it. Continue with the sound. What you got in the middle is called a glottal stop, written like this in IPA, similar to a question mark. He wants you to do this. This is a glottal stop. This is this glottal means something refers to the larynx, I believe. So it's like a laryngeal stop, a larynxist stop. This sound can be heard in some English words, For example, the introduction written uh-oh. The glottal stop would be called hamza in Arabic, and it is used a lot. For example, in the word sha'n, and the word bara'a, the word sayyi, and so on, or shay. Okay, from now on we will use the IPA to represent phones and enclose them in square brackets. Thus, this glottal stop is the glottal stop. The oral cavity, which is the mouth, in other words. After traveling through the larynx, the airstream passes through the oral cavity or mouth and or the nasal cavity or nose, and then to the outside air. There is a cavity in our head, in the nose, that is not seen, as you can see here. There's a cavity here in our head that passes through the air. The air passes, through which the air passes. We want to drink water. Give me 1 second. I am back. So the airstream passes through the oral cavity and or nasal cavity and then to the outside air. In the oral cavity, the airstream can be modified in many different ways to produce different sounds. using the teeth, the tongue, using the tongue. The main organs used to make these modifications are the tongue and lips. The jaw is also involved, though in more subtle ways. The phones B and Z are produced on the same physical input, a voiced aggressive airstream, but they sound quite different and are formed differently. B is produced by first completely blocking the airstream through the oral cavity at the lips, allowing no air to escape to the outside. Air from the lungs passes through the vibrating vocal cords, vocal folds, and builds up behind the lip closure. Then the lips are parted and the air behind the closure is released. Z is pronounced by partial blocking the airstream from the lungs at the alveolar ridge. The alveolar ridge is the part at the that is right behind the upper teeth. This is the alveolar ridge, the part right behind the upper teeth. Z is produced by partially blocking the airstream from the lung at the alveolar ridge and closing and allowing the air to escape continuously with a noisy sound. These two phones differ in both the ways they are produced and where they are produced. The nasal cavity. At the back of the roof of the mouth is the velum or soft palate, which can be raised or lowered. When lowered, the airstream can enter the nasal cavity. When fully raised, the airstream is channeled into the oral cavity. Okay, let's clarify. So, if you touch with your tongue the roof of your mouth, you'll find that it is soft at the front, close to the teeth. Then if you go further back, close to the larynx, you'll find it soft. So we divide it to a hard palate. This is the palate. Hard palate and soft palate or velum. So as you can see, the tongue I don't understand. 1 second, I forgot. How do you block the air exactly? When lowered, the velum, at the back of the roof of the mouth is the velum or soft palate, which can be raised or lowered. Okay. Is it blocked here or here? I'm confused. When lowered, the airstream can enter the nasal cavity. When fully raised, the airstream is channeled into the oral cavity. So it is here, in this part. how I'm trying to comprehend it, and I'm blowing. So when you blow with your mouth, like this, the velum blocks this area. I can't imagine it. I'm struggling to imagine it. How do you search it? Velum. Soft palate.
Hello again, everyone. It's Matt from KenHub, and in this tutorial, we will be discussing the soft palate. The soft palate is the posterior muscular extension of the hard palate, which together makes up the palate of the oral cavity and the floor of the...
This is from the side, and this is from the front. This is the face. It looks very strange. I cannot imagine it. So this is the neck. This is the back of the mouth. This is, the teeth are here.
The nasal cavity. This video will discuss the soft palate, including its borders, its function, its general anatomy, and its musculature. The soft palate is a purely muscular structure. It is bordered superiorly by the respiratory mucosa of the nasal cavity and inferiorly by the mucosa of the oral cavity. Posteriorly, it has no borders and hangs at an inferior angle towards the larynx, where it dangles the uvula in its midline. Posterolaterally, however, it forms part of...
The nasal cavity is huge, man.
the superior portion of the palatoglossal and palatopharyngeal folds. Anteriorly, it is connected to the bony hard palate via an aponeurotic plate at the level of the vibrating line. The soft palate is multifunctional and aids speech and the pronunciation of velar consonants along with the dorsum of the tongue. When swallowing, it rises to close the nasal passages and prevents any food or liquid from entering into the nasal cavity. It does the same thing for the larynx when sneezing. The uvula helps produce the gag reflex when touched. The soft palate makes up approximately 1/3 of the posterior portion of the palate. Its oral mucosal lining is covered with mucus-secreting salivary glands. It has no bony frame and is made up entirely of various muscle fibers. The musculature is comprised of 5 main structures, including the musculus uvula.
Okay. Try blowing with your nose, then blowing with your mouth. Blowing with your nose, then blowing with your mouth. You'll notice the movement of your velum. I'm tired. Let's go. The nasal cavity. When fully raised, the airstream is channeled into vocal cavity, oral cavity. In uttering the word bad, the velum remains closed throughout. What do you mean, closed? The A passes entirely through the oral cavity. So when you mean the velum is raised, it blocks the bad. Bad. It is very subtle. You will feel it if you keep trying to feel it. I started feeling it just now. All these sounds are oral. To produce the word man, the only difference is that the velum is lowered so that the airstream enters into the nasal cavity. Unless you speak very carefully, the velum will remain lowered throughout the word, including the vowel giving man. In the IPA, the A, then the tilde over a symbol, tilde over a symbol, indicates that the sound is nasalized. Someone said, I think he will say it. No? Try to put your finger at your nose, below your nose, and say man. 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 You will feel air coming out of your nose. That's why it's nasal. Man. 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 N. Man. Man. You'll feel vibration in your nose, which is very, very weak. Anyway, let's continue. Types of phones. Speech sounds are divided into two main types: consonants and vowels. Consonants involve a constriction in the vocal tract, obstructing the flow of air. The airstream is impeded or interrupted through somewhere along the path from the lungs to the outside. Vowels are produced with no significant obstruction to the passage of air through the oral cavity, and the air exits unimpeded through the oral cavity and perhaps the nasal cavity as well. Vowels are the most resonant phones, those that resound and re-echo the most, like the chime of Big Ben. Consonants are either non-resonant, like D and F, or somewhat resonant, like M and L. Though these are less resonant than a vowel. Compare these phones with I or A. Think he means with resonance, like E. This is resonance. Like K, how do you resonate with K? Like K. This is not how we pronounce it. It's one time K. There is no resonance. There is no repeating this sound. You cannot elongate the sound. M is somewhat resonant. L is somewhat resonant, which is true. But how is it less resonant than a vowel? L, lamp, lamp. L. It stops to be L. Sheep. Sheep are the sh sound is resonant, somewhat resonant, semi-resonant. Sh. So it's not either resonant or non-resonant. Resonance comes in degrees. The most resonant are vowels. Then some consonants are somewhat resonant, but less resonant. And some consonants are not resonant at all. Okay, let's continue. Let me just scratch my ear. 1 second. Consonants. Consonants are described in terms of the point where the airstream is impeded and how it is impeded. These two properties are called the place of articulation and the manner of articulation. By convention, the places of articulation are shown across the top row of the IPA chart. And the manners of articulation down the first column. Let's see. So these are the places of articulation, and these are the manners of a manner of articulation. Okay, cool. Bilabial, labiodental, dental, alveolar, alveopalatal, retroflex, palatal, velar, uvula, pharyngeal, glottal. And the types and the manners of articulation is a stop, voiceless or voiced, nasal, fricative, voiceless or voiced, affricate, voiceless and voiced, lateral, voiceless, voiced, rhotic, tap, trill, approximant, glides, and glides. Okay. Then we have non-pulmonic sounds, clicks, voiced implosives and ejectives, and diacritics. Then we have vowels. Places of articulation. The main places of articulation are illustrated schematically in figure 2.3. Below, we make a few remarks on each of them. We have labial sounds first. Labial sounds, this is figure 2.3 here. You have the tip of the tongue and the blade of the tongue and the dorsum, which is the back of the tongue. And then we have the lip, number 1, Then they have the upper teeth 2. Then the alveolar ridge 3. Then the retroflex or post-alveolar in 4. Then we have 5, the palate. Then we have 6, the velum. 7 is the uvula. Here it is. 8 is pharyngeal. And 9 is glottal. The upper vocal tract showing main places of articulation of consonants. 1 labial, 2 dental, 3 alveolar, 4 post-alveolar, 5 palatal, 6 velar, 7 uvula, 8 pharyngeal, 9 glottal. Errors emanate from the main active parts or articulators and point towards the typical targets, passive articulators. More precise descriptions of places of articulation can be given by first specifying the active articulator, then the passive one. Thus, apico-alveolar, laminopalatal, dorsovelar, and so on. The tongue tip gives apico, the blade gives lamino, and dorsum gives dorso. Okay. Labial sounds are made with the lips. If both lips are used, the phone is called a bilabial. The initial sounds of bad and mad are bilabials. They are made by bringing the upper and lower lips together, so also is the initial sound of pad. Instead of bringing both lips together, you can bring the lower lip into contact with the upper teeth to form a labiodental. The phones F and V, as in the beginning of the English word fix and vix, are produced in this way. Dental. Dental sounds are formed with the tongue and the upper teeth. Usually the tip of the tongue is used and touches the upper teeth, as in English th and the. The initial phones are 3 and this respectively. I wish I could memorize these symbols. In some dialects of English, including Californian English, the tip of the tongue protrudes between the upper and lower teeth of these consonants, which are called interdentals. The N and D phones in French are made with the tip of the... What's the difference between interdentals and normal dentals? Th and th. Th, th. Th, th. Th, th. Th, th. Th, th. Th, th. Th. Th and th. It's almost identical. I can't hear the difference. The N and D phones in French are made with the tip of the tongue touching the upper teeth. N, N, noon, noon. This is how we pronounce it in Arabic as well. The tip of the tongue at the N. This can be in the tip of the tongue touching the upper teeth. This can be specified in the IPA by the tooth symbol under the letter, as in this. In English, the contact is slightly further back at the alveolar ridge. N, 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 N. In some languages, dental sounds are made not with the tip of the tongue against the teeth, but the blade of the tongue, which is the middle of the tongue, the part behind the tip. Many Australian languages have such sounds. The Yinjibarndi, which is a Pama-Nyungan language in Australia, word Thugu, young boy, begins with this type of phone. Thugu. 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 It's not Thugu, it is Thugu. 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 I don't know how it is pronounced. Thugu, 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 as in Nuhurga, 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 Nuhurga. Oh, in Yinjibarndi, the spelling, the H indicates that it is the blade of the tongue that makes contact with the upper teeth. So it is not Thugu, it is Tugu. 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 It's not Tugu. It is Tugu. Tugu. Nurga. 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 It's very weird to do it. Doing it is very weird. Alveolar. Sounds made with the front part of the tongue, usually the tip, sometimes the blade, touching or almost touching the alveolar ridge. The ridge on the roof of the mouth, just behind the upper teeth, are called alveolars. The initial phones of the English words top, dog, log, nag, rag, and sag are all alveolars. If the tip of the tongue makes contact just behind the alveolar ridge, the sound is sometimes called post-alveolar or retroflex. Post-alveolar phones occur in Yinjibarndi words Marda and blood. The RD indicates that the D sound is made further back than ordinary D. And Thurla. I. How is it pronounced? Marda. 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 It is not Marda. It is Marda. 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 Mada. No, it's Marda. Marda. This is double difficult. It is Tula. This is Tula. Pronounced Tula. But it's not a normal T. It is the blade of the tongue makes the contact with the upper teeth. Thula. 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 It is all very difficult. How do they pronounce it? I want to hear it. It's not available, unfortunately. Okay, let's continue. Palatal. The palate or hard palate is the large region of the roof of the mouth extending from a little behind the alveolar ridge to the soft palate or velum. Sounds made with contact or approximation between the tongue and the palate are called palates. If this is in the front part of the palate, immediately behind the alveolar ridge, the sound is alveopalatal. The English words shingle, jungle, and child begin with alveopalatals. Sh, 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 sh. It's true. You constrict both the tip of the tongue. It almost touches the alveolar ridge, and the blade comes close to the palate. Shingle, 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 jungle, jungle, jungle. Child, 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 child. For the first fans of the Hungarian word nyak, neck, and gyufa match represent the spelling by nya and gya. The contact is a little further back, and these ferns are palatals. Neck, like this. Neck, neck. Gufa, 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 how? Gufa, gufa. Kufa, Kufa. It's not Goofa, Goo, it's Ku. The contact is, let's try, Hungarian is easy to find, I believe.
Ufa. Ufa.
Ufa,
Ufa.
Ufa.
Nyak. Nyak.
Nyak, Ufa, 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 Yak, Yak. Okay. Wheeler. I want to finish the places of articulation before we end the video. Behind the hard palate lies a soft area called the soft palate or velum. Consonants made with the back of the tongue touching the velum are called velar sounds. Although it is physically possible to touch the velum with the tip of the tongue, it is not easy and no language is known to employ this combination. Velar sounds begin the English words call, kill, car, go, grip, grip, give. The first three words begin with the voiceless velar stop. Kill, cull, despite the different spellings. Oh, so the first three words is the same sound. The nasal sound at the end of the English word sing, sing, is also a velar. Sing, sing. Uvula. The uvula is the appendage hanging down at the back of the velum. The relatively few phones made with the back of the tongue and the uvula are uvulas. The R sound of Parisian French, many dialects of Dutch, which is an Indo-European language found in Europe, and German, a few dialects of English, such as Northumbrian English, are not necessarily always realized as uvular trills, made with rapid vibration of the uvula. R, 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 and r, 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 and r. Pharyngeal. The pharynx is the chamber behind the back of the tongue, above the larynx, and roughly at right angles to the oral cavity. Pharyngeal consonants are made by pulling the root of the tongue back to narrow the pharynx so that the air passes through noisily. Someone wrote X in the chat. Hi. Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Ahmed. Pharyngeal consonants are made by pulling the root of the tongue back to narrow the pharynx so that the air passes through noisily. Pharyngeals are not found in English. Arabic, Afro-Asiatic, Arabian, found in the Arabian Peninsula and North Africa, however, has them. I believe it's like ha, and ayn, and Hunayn they are pharyngeal sounds. Let's confirm. Yes, I'm correct. Like ayn and har. These two. So does Danish in the R sound of words like rod and which is council. Really? Danish. Pharyngeal approximant. Aven. Like this? Aven.
Ravn.
Hown.
Ravn. Ravn.
Strange.
Ravn.
Anyway. Glottal. Glottal consonants involve a constriction of the glottis, or opening between the vocal folds. We have already encountered one segment made at this place, namely the glottal stop, which is produced by holding the vocal folds together and then releasing them. The initial phones of the English words like hot and hill are also glottal. There was another sound that we make at the glottis, which is the opening between the vocal cords. And Yes, I don't think there is any other sound. We can make a voiceless but no, I don't know if there is any language that does that. Anyway, with that we reach the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and see you later, where we will learn about the manners of articulation. Goodbye. Assalamu alaikum.